This photograph shouldn't exist. A full-grown wild lion, 200 pounds of apex predator embracing a man like a long-lost brother. Every expert said this was impossible, deadly, insane. But in 1971, on a dusty hill in Kenya, something happened that rewrote what we thought we knew about memory, love, and wildness. 3 days before this photo was taken, Christian the lion had been missing for 3 weeks. His trackers had lost him, his caretaker had given up hope, and the 2 men flying 4,000 miles to see him had no idea if he was even alive. This is that story, but not the version you've heard, because the real miracle wasn't the hug. It was what happened in Christian's brain the moment he heard his name. December 1969. Harrods, department store, London, 4th floor, exotic pets department. You could buy a camel, an elephant, even a lion cub. 2 Australian guys in their 20s, John Rendell and Ace Berg, walked in looking for furniture. They walked out with a 3-month-old lion. Price, 250 guineas, more than 3 months' rent. Now, you're thinking, what kind of idiots buy a lion? Here's the thing, they weren't idiots. They were looking at a cub in a cage the size of your closet, and something in those eyes, something desperate, was screaming for a chance. What they didn't know, this one impulsive decision would lead to the most documented interspecies bond in scientific history, and it would answer a question that still divides researchers today. Stick around, because the answer will break your heart.
Problem: John and Ace had 0 experience with exotic animals. They were furniture salesmen. They lived above a shop in Chelsea called Sophisticat. And now they had a lion cub living in the basement. Christian's first home was literally a showroom. Pine tables, velvet sofas, antique chairs, and a litter box the size of a bathtub. Here's what's wild. Christian never destroyed a single piece of furniture, never attacked a customer. He seemed to understand, somehow, that this human world required gentleness. Every day at 3 p.m., they'd leash him and walk to a walled garden behind a Moravian church. Picture it, central London, 1970, a golden lion cub trotting down the sidewalk. Tourists stopped, cameras clicked. Christian became a celebrity. But there was a problem nobody wanted to talk about. Month 3, 35 pounds. Month 6, 70 pounds. Month 9, 120 pounds. Christian was doubling in size every 12 weeks. His paws went from quarters to dinner plates. His playful nips started drawing blood. John described it like this: "One morning I reached down to scratch his ears, and his head was suddenly at my chest level. The day before, it had been at my waist. You could feel time running out." They had 2 choices. Option 1, a zoo, safe, fed, caged forever. Option 2, something that had never been successfully done. Send a 5th-generation captive lion whose ancestors hadn't seen wilderness in 100 years back to Africa. Every zoologist said the same thing: he'll be dead in a month. And then 2 strangers walked into their furniture shop and changed everything.
Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna, actors from the film Born Free, but more importantly, friends of George Adamson, the legendary conservationist who'd returned Elsa the lioness to the wild in Kenya. Virginia asked one question: "Have you heard of George Adamson?" 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from Kenya. George's response: "Send him. We'll see what he's made of." August 1970, cargo plane, London to Nairobi, then hours of dusty roads into Kenya's remote northeast. When Christian stepped out of his transport crate onto African soil, he stood frozen.
The air smelled like dust and dried grass, nothing like London's rain and exhaust. Temperature 95 degrees. The horizon stretched forever. George Adamson watched Christian sniff the wind. Then the old man smiled. He's home, he just doesn't remember yet. But here's what John didn't know. Christian's teachers would be two other lions, Boy and Catania. And in 2 months, one of them would be dead. The first weeks were brutal. Christian didn't know which sounds meant danger, didn't understand lion hierarchy, had never hunted anything bigger than a pigeon. Boy, the older male, taught him through combat, dominance, pain. Christian failing to hunt. Boy establishing dominance. Christian sleeping alone, separated from the pride. John noticed something during those 5 weeks. Every evening when Christian heard John's voice across the camp, his ears would perk up, his head would turn. Even exhausted, even bloodied from training, he was filing those sounds away somewhere deep. Then tragedy struck. Catania, the young lioness, vanished. Crocodiles, most likely. Weeks later, Boy attacked George's assistant and had to be shot. Christian was alone. And then came the day John had to leave. They didn't say goodbye. You can't explain forever to a lion. John just walked to the Land Rover. As they drove away, John looked back. Christian stood at the camp's edge, watching the dust cloud grow. I kept thinking, did he understand? Did he know I wasn't abandoning him? Or did he think I was just gone? John didn't cry in the truck. He cried 3 days later in a London hotel room. For 9 months, George Adamson sent letters. Christian is hunting warthogs now. He's learning to read the wind. He challenged a wild male today. He lost, but he's learning. And then, month 9, Christian has found 2 wild lionesses. He's building his own pride. Against all odds, he's becoming a king. Scientists still debate how this happened. Captive-born lions have a 90% mortality rate when released. Christian wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. And that's when John made the decision. I have to see him again. Everyone told him not to go. Friends, he's moved on. Family, it's dangerous. Scientists, lions don't form emotional bonds with humans. A year is too long. He won't remember. Even George warned him. He's wild now. He might not recognize you. He might see you as prey. John booked the flight anyway.
July 1971. John and Ace land in Nairobi. 8-hour drive to Kora. When they arrive, George meets them with bad news. Christian hasn't been seen in 3 weeks. His pride moved north. The trackers lost them. I'd flown 4,000 miles to see a ghost. They scan the ridges. Nothing. George tries to prepare them. He might not come back. This territory is huge. He could be anywhere. That night, John can't sleep. The temperature drops to 60 degrees. He sits outside his tent, listening. Every sound could be Christian. Every rustle, every distant roar. None of them are. Ace asks the question they're both thinking. What if he doesn't remember us? John doesn't answer. Then we'll know we succeeded, that he doesn't need us anymore. But God, I hope he remembers. The trackers return at midday. They found old tracks heading north. Christian is moving away from camp, not toward it. George sits with John at breakfast. I think you should prepare yourself. He's wild now. He has his own life. John nods, but inside, something is breaking. 6 p.m. They're eating dinner. George freezes mid-sentence. Do you hear that? From the darkness beyond camp, a sound, soft, familiar. George stands slowly. His face changes. That's him. Christian's here. Later, George would say,
"In 40 years with lions, I've never seen this." Christian appeared the night before John arrived, after 3 weeks of silence. He knew. Somehow, he knew. Morning. They find him on the same ridge where they first said goodbye. Christian stands 100 yards away, backlit by sunrise, golden mane glowing. Behind him, 2 lionesses in the grass. John barely recognizes him. This isn't the London lion. This isn't even the adolescent from a year ago. This is 200 pounds of wild African predator, scars on his shoulders, muscles rippling. Christian stares down at them. George whispers, "Don't move. Let him decide." For 30 seconds, nobody breathes. Christian's tail flicks. His ears rotate. His eyes lock on John. "Please, please remember me." And then John can't help it. He calls out, "Christian!" Just the name, the same way he used to call him in London, the same tone, the same voice. Christian's ears snap forward. His entire posture changes. He runs, not a stalk, not a cautious approach, full sprint, pure joy. Christian covers 100 yards in seconds, and then he leaps, 200 pounds of lion airborne, front paws extended. Christian's paws hit John's shoulders. His massive head presses against John's face, and from deep in his chest, a sound John hasn't heard in a year. Christian was purring. A wild lion who'd spent a year hunting, fighting, surviving, was purring like a house cat. Ace steps forward. Christian does the same to him. The embrace, the purring, the overwhelming proof that love doesn't forget. And then something even more impossible happens. The lionesses, Mona and Lisa, come down the hill. Wild-born, never touched by humans. They should see John and Ace as threats. Instead, they walk up to Christian, rub against him, and then, following some invisible signal, they approach John and Ace. John described it later. "I could feel her breath on my arm, warm, steady. Her fur smelled like dust and wild grass, and she was calm, like we'd known each other forever." George Adamson, watching from distance, "In 40 years, I'd never seen wild lionesses except humans because a male told them to." Christian communicated something. "These are mine, they're safe," and they believed him. They stayed together until sunset. Christian kept moving between John and Ace, pressing his head against them, making sounds that weren't purrs, weren't roars, something in between. Something that sounded like, I remember everything." John returned one more time in 1972. Christian was fully wild by then, regal, distant, a king in his prime. But he still remembered, still chose to spend one last night with them. After that, Christian disappeared into the wilderness. George believed he lived a full life, 10 years, maybe more, raising cubs, defending territory, free. Christian's body was never found, but somewhere in the grass and red earth of Kenya, his bones rest. The 5th-generation captive lion who became completely wild and never forgot where he came from. Here's what Christian's story proves. Love doesn't forget. Even when instinct takes over, even when everything changes, the bond between souls, human or animal, survives distance, time, transformation. But here's what you need to know. In 1970, there were 300,000 lions in Africa. Today, fewer than 20,000. We're losing 1,000 lions every year. Christian's story isn't just about one lion. It's about what we're losing right now. Today, if this story moved you, here's what you can do in the next 60 seconds. 1. Visit lionrecoveryfund.org. QR code appears on screen. Even $5 protects 100 acres of lion habitat. 2.
Share this video with one person. Some stories deserve to live forever. 3. Subscribe to this channel. Every week we tell stories that remind you what matters. Christian proved that love is stronger than instinct. Now it's our turn to prove that memory is stronger than extinction. The kings are disappearing, but they don't have to.